Remember, the 5th of November, Gunpowder, Treason, and Plot. So today is the 5th of November, which is also known as Guy Fawkes Night or Bonfire Night here in the United Kingdom, and it only hit me a few days ago that this is only a British slash, Great Britain thing. This isn't a thing which is done all over the world, and it really makes sense when you think about the history of it, but it's something that I figured, given that I didn't know it was only British, and maybe you didn't know about it all, I could explain it in today's video as your favourite, hopefully, internet British person. So hopefully you'll enjoy this video. Let's get straight into it, and let's explain exactly what is going on with Bonfire Night, because you might not even understand the pure principle besides, like, I think fireworks go off. That's a pretty widely done thing across the world, but why are there fireworks tonight? Why are there bonfires tonight? What is the deal with all of that? Well, I think the simplest, kind of answer that question is like, oh yeah, well, this is the 5th of November is the anniversary of when that whole Guy Fawkes thing happened. However, in British culture, again, in the schooling system, at least in my schooling system, we learned a whole bunch about this, and as I think back to the story, it's kind of crazy just how, like, indoctrinated into you it is that, like, oh yeah, this guy did a really bad thing. He tried to commit treason, if you don't know, by trying to blow up the Houses of Parliament, and then every 5th of November, we do, like, fireworks sometimes, but also we do bonfires where we burn a lot of stuff, usually including, by the way, a little figure. Let me show you, actually. Usually including, by the way, a little figure of the guy. This is the wrong screen, apparently. There we go. So, usually including a little figure of the guy, which looks something like that. That's right, we burn Guy Fawkes, the person who tried to commit treason all these years ago, every 5th of November, as a little reminder of, like, don't commit treason or we'll burn you alive, or something like that. It's kind of crazy, really, but what is the story of this guy that we burn every 5th of November? Like, this is the sort of thing where if another country told me this story, I would not believe that everyone genuinely believed and to some extent genuinely celebrated it, but it is a real thing, and yeah, I guess let's go briefly into it. So, basically, Guy Fawkes is a guy who was born in England, in York, which I found interesting, the north of England. He was a Catholic in Britain, and back in the 1600s when this happened, this was actually, the Catholic-Protestant split was actually a really big deal. It was still decided, like, monarch to monarch. We have a Catholic monarch sometimes, we have a Protestant monarch sometimes, and it would actually cause a real split in the country when, like, oh yeah, they'd push Protestant policies forwards, or they'd push Catholic, towards the Pope policies forwards, which is, again, it's fascinating to me that, like, even 400, 500 years ago, that was still a big enough deal that it caused splits in the monarchs, and that it caused people like Guy Fawkes or Guido Fawkes, as he's also known, to kind of do this other thing. So, by the way, Guy Fawkes, you might be familiar with him. He's known for having his mask, which looks like this. Again, this is why I assumed it was so widely known. This is in V for Vendetta, right? This is famous because of V for Vendetta. In spite of that, I guess people just didn't know its original use. They just think it's the anonymous mask, but it is the, traditional Guy Fawkes mask, and this is what Guy Fawkes himself looks like. Maybe that's familiar to you, maybe it's not, but Guy Fawkes, this man wearing this mask, being burned at the stake here, basically, he was Catholic, born in a, at the time, Protestant country, with King James on the throne, and he went off to go fight a war for the Spanish versus the Dutch. The Catholic Spanish were fighting the then Protestant Dutch, and he was like, you know what, let's go fight for their side, and during that time, kind of like the story of Lee Harvey Oswald, he figured, you know what, why don't we go kill the King of England? Well, when he got back to England, he'd been in the spirit to fight for what he believed in, and he got involved with some English Catholics who were like, why don't we go and kill the King of England? So what they decided to do is kill the King of England on the day that he walked into Parliament. So every 4th of November, which is when Parliament reconvenes, if I'm not mistaken. At the time it was anyway. It probably isn't today. But the 4th of November, which was when Parliament was reconvening, he figured, let's go underneath, let's, again, light a bunch of, get some gunpowder down there, make a big explosion. That way in the morning when everything goes off, we can cause this huge explosion, all the lords will die and the king will die, and then the line of succession would have made it such that a Catholic person would have taken the throne instead. Again, that's the understanding, at least from his behalf. And my favourite thing about this whole story, it's not too, that notable. Like, okay, assassination plot, treason plot, kind of cool stuff. Treason's a fun word to learn, and you learn it from this story, or I learned it from this story. By the way, treason, if you don't know, is trying to kill a king, monarch, a leader, something like that. It's treason to be against your own country. So basically, yeah, this is the first time I learned about treason, and it's not just fascinating because it's a stand-up treason case. It's because when they found the guy, this is the bit they don't tell you too much about, but they found the guy, and he just says, like, they speak to him, they're like, what are you doing here? You should not be here. What are you doing with 36 barrels of gunpowder? Again, gunpowder, you can imagine 36 barrels is enough to cause a large explosion, and he's just like, I'm here to kill the king because, you know, and then he listed his just full thing to the guards, and then they took him to their superior, and he told this full story there. He didn't give them his honest name, he said John Johnson, but they just like, you know, they told him everything, and even the king himself was like, you know, this guy is a very honest treason committer, and there's a part of that I really like personally. So, yeah, basically he went to the king, and they, you know, he committed treason, and, you know, they wanted to get the information about his co-conspirators, so they tortured him. Again, this bit you don't know too much about, but they tortured him like horrifically for days. They started with light torture. You know, the king, because he liked him, was like, you know, start light on the torture, then we'll move on to the rack if he doesn't give us information. So they tortured him extensively. They got a bunch of true information, all of his co-conspirators, eventually. Like, he held out for a really long time. They also got a bunch of false information, which is still known to this day. Like, a lot of people think there were secret tunnels. I was taught about the secret tunnels they made. It's not a true thing. He was just being tortured, and they're like, where are the secret tunnels? And he's like, there are secret tunnels. Okay, just stop torturing me. Fun fact, that's what you do under torture. You give false information. And then when, to kill him, we, you know, they, again, so the 5th of November was the actual day that he was, like, you know, caught and tortured and stuff. When they eventually did it, they, you know, they sentenced him very quickly. There wasn't really much of a defense for, like, I tried to commit treason and kill, you know, destroy the entire Parliament building. And, yeah, when they sentenced him to be hung, drawn, and quartered. This is another, like, because, you know, England's so ancient, we still, you know, we had these things even back then. Hung, drawn, and quartered is where you hang someone, but not till you kill them, just till you mostly kill them. So all the pain of hanging, but you save them at the last second. Then you do a bunch of, like, you disembowel them, you take away the manhood, all that sort of stuff. Then you tie their limbs to 4 horses, and then they, like, separate the body that way. And then they take them to the 4 corners of England. I'm not kidding with this punishment. That's what they did to him. Although, fortunately, or unfortunately for people who wanted him to suffer, he actually died from the hanging by accident. So, there you go. But they did take 4 parts of his body to each corner of England. And because they wanted to send such a strong message about, you know, like, they want to send a strong message about, like, don't commit treason, I guess. We celebrate every 5th of November, Bonfire Night, or Guy Fawkes Night. Again, both terms are interchangeable. I think Guy Fawkes one is the official one. And we celebrate it by either just having normal fireworks, or we burn this guy. Again, it's so ridiculous that, like, it's almost like indoctrination, like, you do not commit crimes against state. This is what happens to you. And every year we celebrate, and again, a lot of people, you know, like, it's not like maybe 1 in every 10 or something will have a real bonfire where they'll burn a real guy like this. And I don't know, there's just a part of me that thinks that's kind of nuts that that's a real thing we do. We did take the tradition, okay, so that's the tradition done. We did take it with us when we went to America and to all of our colonies around the world. Most colonies now, especially America, they, as a way to, like, prove their independence from British, they, you know, they don't do it anymore. They do something called Pope's Day today, but does anyone know Pope's Day? You don't know Pope's Day. And a few other colonies, Canada, a little bit of New Zealand, sometimes South Africa, do a little bit of celebrating. But to this day, it remains mostly an English tradition. There's just, every 5th of November, we celebrate not committing treason by burning a man alive, or a pretend man alive. Just to clarify, you don't, like, dress a guy up as, you know, this, as Guy Fawkes. But yeah, that is where this mask comes from. That is where this holiday comes from, and this is the man that you might not know. There's also a really famous blog in the UK called Guy Fawkes, and he's known for, I don't actually understand enough about him, so just very briefly, he does, like, some form of, like, expose journalism or something like that, and, you know, people don't like to be around him because of that. And yeah, that's because it's the same kind of, like, doesn't like Parliament, wants to blow it up, but, like, I guess with news instead of thing. Anyway, there you go. There's everything you need to know about Guy Fawkes and Bonfire Night. Hopefully you'll enjoy the video. This was just a random one off, but there's a little bit about my country, and I think this is weird. If I found this out about another country, I'd be pretty darn skeptical of it, and maybe you should be off the UK now. So, second channel, don't care.